Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel once again. In this video, we will go over the RMF control selection process, that is after the system has been categorized. But before we do that, a free way to support the channel is by hitting the subscribe button to help the channel grow. Alright, let's get into it. So after an organization completes the categorization of an information system as low impact, moderate impact, or a high impact for the security objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So the next step here will be to select the security control by choosing from the appropriate security control baseline. That is the Appendix D of the Special Publication 853 Rev 4. And again, bear in mind, I'm using the Rev 4 here. We're not using the Rev 5 yet. So we're going to go over the control selection process in this video by using the 853 Rev 4. After selecting the applicable security control baseline from Appendix D, organization initiates the tailoring process to modify appropriately and align the control more closely with the specific condition within the organization. That is, the baseline controls that you select. Sometimes some of the controls might not be applicable to your system, or some of them need a little bit more stringent control. You have to tighten it up a bit. So regardless of whatever your situation or your system situation is, you can do the tailoring process based on your organization's requirement. To understand the tailoring process, you can read Special Publication 853 Rev 4, go to page 53, and then you can read the tailoring baseline security controls. This explains to you exactly what the tailoring means, right? After selecting the applicable security control baseline from Appendix D, organization initiate the tailoring process to modify appropriately and align the control more closely with the specific condition within the organization. That is the control related to organization, mission, business, functions, information system, or environment of operation. The tailoring process includes identifying and designating common controls in initial security control baseline, applying scoping consideration to the remaining baseline security controls, selecting compensating control security controls if needed, right? So you read all of that, and then here you see that it says that the tailoring process as an integral part of the security control selection and specification is part of the comprehensive organizational risk management process, framing, assessing, responding to, and monitoring information security risk. Organizations use risk management guidance to facilitate risk-based decision-making regarding the applicability of security controls in the security control baseline. Ultimately, organizations use the tailoring process to achieve cost-effective risk-based security that support organizational mission business needs. Tailoring activities are approved by who? The authorizing official, in coordination with the selected organizational risk official, such as what? The risk executive or risk manager or whoever is within the organization or within the agency. Chief information officers, senior information security officers, information system owner, common control providers, right? Prior to implementing the security control, organizations have the flexibility to perform the tailoring process at the organizational level for all information systems. So you can select the baseline controls as we're going to do, as you're going to see how we do it. But then again, you have the leeway to tailor the control. Not all the control that is recommended by NIST or the government is applicable to your system. So you have to tailor some of these controls and take them out. So for instance, if there is a control that talks about what? VoIP, voice over IP. If your system does not implement voice over IP, you don't need that control. You just have to tailor it out. If the system is talking about what? Remote access, and your system does not support remote access, you really don't need to implement a remote access, right? So some of these things are what we call the tailoring guidance to help you do the control tailoring. So I would recommend that you read the page 53. You can start from, actually you can start reading from page 51, the process to understand how the selection and specification of security control works. Understand that, and then you can see how we do the hands-on selecting the baseline controls. Not all the baseline controls, again, will be applicable to all systems at any given time. So you have to do what? The tailoring process, eliminating and adding some of these controls. All right, so in this video, because we're going to do the hands-on selection, we're going to assume that our system is called what? ABC system, and it's a moderate system. And again, just for a reminder, we have tools like the CSAM and X-Actor in the work environment lately within the agencies that can speed up all these controls for you. Typically, or normally you don't have to do the control selection like we used to do back in the days, using the spreadsheet. But it's good practice, to know how to do it. So when the system speed up this control, you know exactly what's going on, and you can actually interpret and then make sense out of these controls. So now we have a control selection spreadsheet that we're going to use. All right, so this is a typical spreadsheet that we use for control selection. You'll notice that here we have the system name, the system owner. We also have the system security categorization, that is the level. What is the fifth level? And then we also have the develop or last revised date. If it is new development, whatever date whatever date you're developing this new document, you put the date here. If it is a revise or you're making a revision, you put the date there as well. We have the control ID, and then we have the system impact level. We have the low impact level, moderate impact level, and high impact level. We have the control name. We have the control requirement, which is what exactly the control should be doing, or what is the control doing. We have the supplemental guidance, that is Rev 4. Again, Rev 4. We're using Rev 4. Take notice of that. We're using Rev 4. All right. Because in Rev 5, it's going to be called discussion as we go along. But for Rev 4, we're going to be using the supplemental guidance. We have the related control, we have the references, we have a control type, we have the implementation status, and then we have the implementation statement. These are what the control implementation, the statement goes in here. All right, so now let's look at the 853 revision 4 document. So first off, to start off, we have to go to the security control baseline summary, which is the appendix D of this document. We'll do a control F, and then we search for appendix D. So, and then we go down to where it says security control baseline summary. We click on that. We go down. You notice that in this appendix D, the security control baseline, we have the low impact, the moderate impact, and then the high impact. And because we are assuming that our ABC system is actually a moderate impact system, so we're going to concentrate on this column here for all our controls to be selected, right? And again, this is what the initial control baseline. This is before any control tailoring is applied to this control selection process. All right, so you notice that there are instances where it says not selected. What this means is that the control, for instance, AC9, previous login notification, this is not selected, right? As an example, this is how the AC9 looks like. What control is AC9, the previous login notification. So you notice that most of the time when you log into certain banks, they tell you exactly when was the last time you log into the system. So this is what the AC9, previous login notification. It tells you the last login date and time. So that control is typically for high system, but now you notice that for all the baseline, the high, the moderate, and then the low baseline, none of this is being selected. Then there are some systems that still implemented even though none of the baseline is calling for its implementation. All right, so moving on. So if the controls are not selected, it means you're not gonna include them in your control selection. So like I said, we're gonna assume that our ABC system is a moderate impact system. So everything that we're gonna be concentrating on is gonna be under this baseline. We're not gonna be worrying about all the controls here or all the controls in the high impact baseline. We're gonna be concentrating on just the moderate impact baseline. And let me just quickly explain what the P1, P2 stands for. So you have these priorities, right? The P1, P2, P3. It means that when you select your control and when these controls are being implemented on the system, the P1 controls must be implemented first before the P2. So it means that the security architect or the engineers, they have to go down the list regardless. They're not going to go alphabetical. They're just going to go P1, implement all the P1s. This is P2, so this is not going to be selected until all the rest of the P1s down the list has been selected. Coming back, and then they start with the next P2, and then go down and select all the P2 and come back again and do the P3. So these are the order of implementation. You can see here it says that priority code 1, P1 first, that's the sequencing. Implement P1 security control first, and then implement P2 security control after implementation of P1 control, and so on and so forth. So definitely the P priorities are very, very important. And likewise, when we're talking about continuous control monitoring in future videos, you see that the P1 and the P2, P3s, they have ways whereby you can incorporate them in doing your continuous control monitoring. All right, let's get back into our control selection process. So now let's go into the spreadsheet and start filling out our spreadsheet and selecting the control manually. All right, so here, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to fill in the system name. So in our case here, our system name is ABC System. And who's going to be the system owner? So you should know your system owner's name. So we're just going to use a fictitious name here. John Doe. Let's use John Doe. All right, so John Doe is our system owner. That's the name. And what is the fifth level? All right, so we're going to select the fifth level here to be a moderate, because that's what we are assuming our system to be. And then the date is going to be today's date, actually. So we're going to do 4/15/2021. That is the date that we are developing this control selection documentation. All right, so now the first control that we're going to talk about here is going to be what? The AC1, which is what? The control ID is AC-1. So we're going to put that here, which says ID AC-1. That's the first thing you do when you're doing this control selection. And then the impact level, right? Our system is actually a moderate system. So we're going to select we're going to put an X in the moderate to represent that our system is a moderate system. And then moving on, the control name. This is the control name. So you're going to copy the control name here. And then this is where you're going to paste it at. All right. So we have the control ID, which is AC1. Our system is a moderate system, so we're going to check that. And then the control name is access control policy and procedure. So now what is the control requirement? And this is where we're going to go to the appendix F to get the control requirement. So we go to appendix F. All right, so here we are at the appendix F that deals with the full details of all the controls that we were looking for. So the control requirement starts from where it says the control. Right after that, you're going to copy everything here all the way down. But make sure you don't add the supplemental guidance, because that has its own column. All right, so we're going to copy this. Then we're going to paste it in here. All right, so we have our control requirement. But bear in mind that the control requirement will have some assignment, organizational defined personnel and roles. This is something that, should be answered in the control implementation statement, but some organization will fill this directly in here, but some will just leave it and explain it in their control implementation step. So let's just move forward, and then you see exactly what I'm saying here. All right, so now we're going to go back to our 853 Rev 4, and then we're going to copy the supplemental guidance. This is the supplemental guidance. Make sure you don't copy the related control. That has its own column as well. So we go down here, we go to the supplemental guidance, we paste all the supplemental guidance here. And then the related control here is, what related control is relating to AC1 is PM-9. So we have PM-9, then we're going to paste that in here. All right, moving on. Now we have references, right? So we go back into our document, and then we see what are the references. Here, this place is the reference. So NIST Special Publication 812 and 800 and 100. These are the references for AC-1. So we copy these references. Right, so we have that. So now here you're going to have to answer if the control is, what type of control is this, right? Is this a control? Is this control a specific or system specific control, a hybrid control, inherited control, agency common control, or not applicable? You have to choose one. But typically, access control, policies, and procedure, they are what? Agency common control. They are typically a common control that everybody is inheriting within the system, within the agency, right? So this here is going to be what? AC, but do not confuse it with what? The access control. This is what? Agency common control. So we're going to select AC down here. All right. And then what is the implementation status? So remember in the lectures, right? Or if you've taken an RMF lectures, they will tell you that the control status is either in place or plan or compensated control or not applicable, right? So if this control has been implemented, if this document already exists, then it means the control is in place. But if there is no access control policy and procedure within the agency, and then they plan to do it in the future, that's where you select the what? The PL, which is the plan. But of course, most organizations have access control policy and procedures, right? So we're going to select what? IP here, in place. All right. So now for the implementation statement, we're going to come back to it after we select about a couple more control, just so we see exactly how we select these controls. Now, the next control we're going to select here in our example here is going to be AC8. All right. So we're going to jump into this and go select AC8. So we're going to quickly jump over to Appendix D once again. All right. So I'm just picking and choosing these controls as we for us to select. So I'm gonna skip AC2. I'm gonna select AC8. So AC8 is actually selected for all the control baseline, right? So if your system is a low system, you need a system use notification. If your system is a moderate impact, you need AC8. If your system is a high system, you still need AC8. So I'm gonna select AC8. Let's see how that works. All right. So we're gonna copy this control ID real quick, and then navigate back into our document. And then we do AC-8. And again, you can choose this is what, a moderate system, or you can just leave it as this first one here. Whichever way you want to do it, just choose one and the rest will be fine. But you can do it as we go along as well. All right, so moving back into the document, what is the name of this control? And the name of this control is what? System use notification. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go to, and remember, and just to point out, this is also a priority 1 control. It means this has to be implemented before any priority 2 control. All right. So now let's go into Appendix F to see the control details, right? All right. So you notice that the Appendix F actually is saying the security control catalog that contains all the details of what the controls are doing. So we're going to go there and then we move down to AC8. All right, so we have AC8 here, system use notification. And again, the control requirement starts from here. The information system displays to what? To users, assignment, organizational defined system use notification message or banner, right? Before granting access to the system that provide privacy and security notice consistent with applicable laws, executive orders, directives, policy, regulation, standards, and guidance, and states that users are accessing a U.S. government, information system. I know most of us have seen this before, where before you log into a system, you have to accept this warning before you log into the system. All right, so we're going to copy this control all the way down here. We copy this. This is the control requirement. Paste it here. We're not done. We still have a couple more here. Okay, copy that. All right, so now we have all the control requirement listed. Now we're going to do the control supplemental guidance. So we go back into our 853 documentation. The supplemental guidance is all the way down here. You copy that. Right, and then what is the related control? So you notice that this has no related control, right? And then the references to is none. So we're going to copy none. This is none, and this is none as well. All right. All right, so we're going to assume that this is also what in place. This control is in place, and the control type is going to be, AC8 is system. AC8 is agency common control, regardless of whatever system you are accessing within the agency. The the system use notification is the same. All right, so here is going to be AC as well, which is what agency common control, and then it's going to be in place, which is IP. We're going to talk about this implementation statement in a bit. All right, so moving on. All right, so the next control here that I want us to talk about is going to be AC11. All right, so move down to Appendix D. We have AC11, which is session lock, right? And pay attention, this has been changed in the new revision 5. In the new revision in 853 Rev 5, this AC11 session lock has been changed to device lock. So in 853 Rev 5, it's not longer going to be a session lock. It's going to be what? A device lock. But here we're using the Rev 4 for our selection. So pay attention. We're using the Rev 4 for selection. But in a case where you're going to be using Rev 5 for your control selection, pay attention to the name change. All right, so moving on. We have AC11. We're going to copy 11. All right, so we're going to paste it down here, AC11. And this is the moderate system. Now what's going to be the control name? The control name for Rev 4, again, is what? Session lock. Control V, we have AC11 session lock. Now we're going to have to copy All right, so now we have to copy what? The control requirement, right, for AC11. So we go to Appendix F. All right, and then we're going to start copying from this place here all the way down here. Copy that. And this is going to be in here for our control requirement. All right, we're going to copy the supplemental guidance, excluding the related control. Supplemental guidance is here. Then we have our related control. So AC11 is related to AC7. We have it here. That's our related control. And then we have the reference. What's going to be our reference? There's no reference for this control. All right, so we're going to go to here. We say none for the reference. I'm moving on to the implementation section. This is what? Session lock. So the session lock again is going to be what? The same uniformity. It's a what? It's an agency common control. So we're going to do AC. We're gonna write AC, and then we're gonna assume that this is also what in place. IP control is in place. All right. So going back to the 853 revision 4 document, you notice that. Let me go to the Appendix D real quick. You notice that. So you notice that here it says that because our system is a moderate impact system, the AC11 we're going to select AC11, which we just did, but it's also saying that we need enhancement 1. All right, so this is enhancement 1. So bear in mind, that means it's 2 controls here. We're going to select AC1 first, and then we're going to go back again and select AC1 enhancement 1. That's going to be another control. So in a nutshell, we have 2 controls here, right? And this is one of the issues that Rev 5 is solving, right? Instead of, lump summing them here like this, like they have it here, they actually separated it, right? So you know exactly if an X is there, you know that control is selected. So for instance, this one, AC6, we have this control is going to be 1. We're going to select this, and then we're going to select AC6 enhancement 1, which is 2. AC6 enhancement 2, that's 3 controls. AC6 enhancement 5, that's 4 controls. AC6 enhancement 9, that's 5 controls. And AC6 enhancement 10, that's 6 controls, right? So in here, we're going to select 6 controls, right? But in our case here, we are selecting 2 controls, because we're going to select the AC11 and then AC11 enhancement 1. So let's see how that works. So we're going to copy this base control first, which is AC11. Copy the base control. Go back into your document, and then we're going to paste it here. And then we're going to add the enhancement that we want to select. That's what enhancement 1. And then we put an X here. All right. So the name here is going to be what? Session lock and with the enhancement. So we're just going to, we can copy this here. Control V. All right, so now we go back to the document. Now we're going to go to Appendix F to get the detail of the control. All right, so here you can see that we have AC11 session lock, which is the base control. We just selected that. Now we're going to go to the control enhancement. The first enhancement that we need to copy here is what? The enhancement 1, which is what? The pattern hiding display. So we're going to copy this. As a matter of fact, let's copy the whole thing so we can delete the one we just had before. Let's go here, and we're going to take off this, and then we add this. So that's going to be session lock pattern hiding displays. That is the name of this control. It is different from AC11. Even though the AC11 is the base control, this is the enhancement, right? And it's a separate control. Okay, moving on. What is the control requirement saying? The information system conceals via the session lock information previously visible on the display with a publicly viewable image. It means that it could be the agency logo, it could be some nice screenshot background, whatever it is, as long as it is not a sensitive information that is being left on your screen. It is fine as long as that image cover your screen. So if you're working on a sensitive document, the document will not be read by anybody passing by. That is what the pattern hiding display. Okay, so we're going to copy this, and that's going to be our control requirement. All right, supplemental guidance. So you see the enhancement 1 has its own supplemental guidance. We're going to copy that. All right, so now what is the related control? So you notice that here we don't have any related control, but we do have reference, right? So we're going to copy the references for AC11 enhancement 1. So the references go here. And then the related control here, we don't have none. So we don't have any related control, so we put none. Okay. All right, so moving on. This is going to be agency common control, and this is going to be what in place. Assuming that is in place, everything is in place, unless it is specifically mentioned to you that this control has not been implemented yet. It is planned, then you select the PL, and then we're going to talk about the implementation statement in a bit. Here it can be system specific. Let's say if this system is using a different logo than the rest of the agency, in terms of the screensaver, it could be system specific. But if it is adopting the same logo or the same image across the organization or across the agency, it's still going to be what? Agency common control. But if this is what being used by, if this image for this background or desktop screensaver is just specifically for this system, it could be what? System specific. Likewise, when we're looking at the AC8, the system use notification, if that system use notification is specifically for that system, not the agency wide, then here, instead of the agency specific, we're going to choose what? The system specific. So it's up to you and the system owner to, you can, as you talk with the system owner, you get to know what these things are. If it is a system specific, it means that it's only applicable to your system in question. But if it's agency common control, which means regardless of what the system is, as long as it's within the agency, all the system will use the same banner notification. Then it is what? Agency common control. But if it's specifically crafted or molded for that particular system, that will be what? A system specific. So these things are subjective based on the system that you're working with. All right, so moving on, if you were to select, say, AC11, as you go down the list, AC17 is selected for a moderate baseline. And if you want to do that, you notice that you're going to select the base control first, which is one control, and then you select the AC17 enhancement 1, that's the next control, AC17 enhancement 2, which is the next control, and so on and so forth. So you notice that you have multiple controls selected for some of this individual control number, right? That is why in 853 Rev 4 we have about 965 controls in total, right? So again, some of them will not be applicable to your system here and there, but then again, in total we have about 965 control. When NIST started, it was about 300 controls. Rev 4 has about 965 control. Rev 5, we're looking at what? About upwards of what? 1,200 controls, right? So they keep adding this new control, withdrawing some of the controls if they are obsolete and what have you. But the ultimate here is to know your baseline and to know what controls are selected and what are not selected, so you don't have to select them in your control. And again, let me repeat that if you have an applications like the CSAM and X Actor within your agency, the only thing you need to do is that you feed those applications with the control baselines or the impact level. If it is a low impact system, you just tell the application, okay, my system is a low impact, and then the application will spit up all the controls for you in a spreadsheet. If your system is a low impact, you just tell the application, okay, CSAM, my system is a low impact, moderate impact system, and then it will spit out all the controls under the moderate impact baseline for you. Likewise, if your system is high, it spits out all the high controls for you in a spreadsheet. The only thing you have to do is to write the implementation statement. All right, so now let's talk briefly about the implementation statement. So for instance, we have what? This AC1, access control policies and procedure, right? All right, so let's see how the implementation statement is. All right, so some of these things, if you work as an ISSO, right, some of these controls, maybe with the system owner, should be writing this implementation statement. The only controls that you will need to consult with the technical guys or the system team or the system engineers are some of the controls that are technical. If you don't understand how the implementation works, you have a meeting with them, they explain to you how they implemented the control, and you write the implementation statement. And the key here is that the implementation statement should answer this control requirement, right? All right, so to save time, I kind of crafted some implementation statement here we can discuss here real quick. So you see, I have this implementation statement to answer some of these questions. It says that the organization develops, document, and disseminates to assignment, organization defined personnel or role. So here, who is going to be seeing this document, this policy and procedure document? So it says that the Chief Information Security Officer, that is the CISO, for XYZ Agency develops, disseminates access control policy for the agency to all employees. You see, to all employees. So this is answering this one here. who, right? And then to all employees and contractors. That's it. So that's if you're writing a good implementation statement, should answer some of these control areas. All right, so moving on, it says the system owner in consultation with the information system security officer, that's the ISSO, develops access control procedure and periodically reviews and update ABC information system or ABC information security policy and procedure, which contains, right? So they develop it periodically and then they review it. So they review it periodically, right? What does it contain? It contains a formal documented access control policy that addresses purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, right? So you see that here is saying that an access control policy that addresses purpose, roles, responsibility, and so on, right? So you have to make sure that when you are writing your implementation statement, it actually answers some of this here. So we can actually add here responsibility. We have management, commitment, organization, coordination among management. So we can actually add here management, commitment, coordination among organizational entity, and compliance, right? So we can add this one here as well to make sure that this is all rounded, right? Okay, so you see this implementation statement is actually tackling the control requirement here. All right, moving on. The next one here is what? Procedure that facilitate the implementation of access control policy and associated access control, and also reviews and updates, right? So we're gonna see that it says a formal documented procedure to facilitate implementation of the access control policy and all associated access control. The ABC system, ISSO, and or the information system security manager, the ISM, reviews and update the policy and procedure at least annually or whenever there is a major update, right? So we see that it says it develops what procedure to facilitate the implementation of access control policy and procedure, and then also the reviews and update access control policy and procedure, the assignment organizational defined frequency, right? So the organizational defined frequency here is being answered here by saying that at least annually or whenever there is a major changes, right? So you see that this implementation statement is going to be written in such a way that it answers all the control requirement. Some of these things can be done in consultation with the system owner, and most of them will be in the access control, procedure within the organization. So these parameters should be known, right? Like when does the organization, what is the policy for reviewing, policy, system policies and procedure? Is it annually, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, this thing should be known. You just have to make sure you know the right information and then you write it in your implementation statement. And this is how you craft your implementation statement. The goal here is to make sure the implementation statement is answering whatever question that the control is tackling. All right, so moving on, we're just going to do it fast. We have implementation statement for AC8 that I just crafted. All right, so this is it here. All right, moving on, we have implementation statement for AC-11. All right, so it says the ABC system initiate a session lock after 15 minutes of inactivity or upon receiving a manual session lock request by the user, right? So this is answering this, right? Prevent further access to the system by initiating a session lock after assignment, organizational defined time period. What is the time period? It says 15 minutes, right? So if you leave your system inactive for 15 minutes, this will be, the system will automatically lock the session, right? So this numbers should, you have to make sure this is the correct number before you write it in your implementation statement, because during the control testing, the control assessors, they will look at these numbers and to make sure that it is actually 15 minutes. They can time it. They can have a user log into a system and then leave it unattended and see and time it for 15 minutes if the system locked itself after 15 minutes. So make sure the numbers that you're written or the numbers that you're writing in your implementation statement is what is actually coded in the system. If it is 20 minutes, 20 minutes. If it's 15 minutes, 15 minutes. Make sure you got the right number, because when they're doing the system testing, they can request for the screenshot in the the config settings to see what number has been set in the back, at the back end to facilitate this. All right, moving on. AC11 enhancement 1. All right, it says the ABC system session log is established using the agency public display logo, right? So publicly display logo or public display logo. It means that whatever logo is going to be displayed as a screensaver should not be a logo or any screen containing sensitive information, and that's it, right? So this is the enhancement. Enhancement is saying that yes, the system can lock the screen after 15 minutes of inactivity, or the user can actually lock the system whenever they leave in manually. But then again, what is the screensaver? The screensaver should not display anything that is sensitive or that is of a sensitive nature. It has to be a public image or logo. All right, so this is how you select controls, and this is how you actually craft your implementation statement to answer the control requirement. And thank goodness we have systems or applications like CSAM and X-Actor that will actually, spit out all this control, everything here. The only thing that you have to worry about is writing the implementation statement. And even with that, that's a lot of work. So you can imagine before this application, CSAM and X-Actor, Trusted Agent, FISMA, and all these applications that were used to manage this documentation, before those applications, everything has to be documented manually in a spreadsheet like this. And you have to write all the controls, and then as well as the control implementation statement for the 900 plus controls. But now all you have to worry about is the implementation statement. You can actually write the implementation system. You can actually write the implementation statement on CSAM and X-Actor, and then you can, kind of download, the entire spreadsheet to make it look like this. And then this is what is going to be embedded in the Word document of SSP. So you can have this control section, this control selection document or spreadsheet embedded in the SSP. So whoever is reading the SSP can actually see the control implementation statement and the controls that are selected. And sometimes too, they can just convert this as a Word. But most cases, you see that this spreadsheet is embedded into the SSP as an attachment or an embedded document. All right, that's it for this video. So you can actually continue selecting, just lay your hands on, we selected about 3 or 4 controls here, but we have tons of controls to select, right? So try laying your hands on this and then, select as few controls as you can, just so you can practice how you select the controls by yourself. And then, get used to it. And then try to write some of the implementation statement. Give yourself some fictitious facts about the system that you make up yourself. And then say, okay, my system is this, it uses that. And then just so you can write a good implementation statement. Practice writing implementation statement that answers the control requirement as you go along. All right, guys. So that's it for this video. If you find this video useful, do like, share, and subscribe if you have not already subscribed. Please do comment below and let me know your thought on this video. I will see you again in the next video.